Welcome to the Crush It in Sales podcast. I'm your host, Melinda Van Fleet. This podcast focuses on the intersection of sales, leadership, and personal development. So let's get ready to crush it. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this week's Crush It in Sales podcast. I have just a fun topic to talk about this week. And I think it's fun because I always love chatting about anything that has to do with limiting beliefs, thinking positive, energy, and that is NLP. I'm going to imagine that most of you have heard of NLP or even really know what NLP is. But for those of you that don't, NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And I first heard of NLP probably a little over 2 years ago when I went to coaching school, and one of my fellow coaching classmates, she told me about this book that I bought right away, but then I never read. And it's called NLP The Essential Guide, and it is from Tom Hoobyar, Tom Dotz, and Susan Sanders. So I bought this book, and I think because it's quite thick, I put it on my bookshelf and never read it. And I definitely understand the gist of NLP intuitively, just from probably years of experience working with people, going to different courses and classes, even in the corporate world. So none of this, in my humble opinion, is really something that might be rocket science-y to people. However, I love how NLP is packaged, and it really makes things clear and concise for someone to learn or fine-tune their thought processes and how they handle communication and so on and so forth. So this is a great book. I do highly recommend it, and I'll put it in the show notes because I did recently pick it up to start reading it. I just felt called to read it. I don't know if you've ever had those moments. I have lots of those moments where something either calls to me or it doesn't, and I tend to follow breadcrumbs and go with the flow. So this was one of those moments. And I've been working on my book series, and that was kind of part of it too. So anyhow, but what is also so interesting that I've never shared is in the early part of 2018, I went to my first Tony Robbins event. It was up in West Palm Beach. It was just for the day. He closed out the day. He spoke for probably 4 to 5 hours. It was very long in terms of how much energy and how long he spoke. And before he spoke was a myriad of other speakers, one of which was Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank. I do remember him. And weaved in were all these speakers that ended up selling programs. And if you've been to one of these events, you know what I mean, and you're probably nodding your head. I had never, ever been to one of these events. And what was amazing to me is that I ended up buying programs. Yeah, not so great, to be really honest. And the funny thing about that is I'm a really tough cookie. I'm a hard sell. My husband and I, for example, went to Mexico after we both lost our jobs in 2009. We wanted to go on a fishing charter very badly, and one of the ways to go on a fishing charter for free was to spend the day at a timeshare, at one of those seminars for timeshares. And if you know what that is, you're probably nodding your head. Yes, I've been to one of those before, and you might even own a timeshare. And I was the tough cookie. My husband was like, I'm not going to be able to, decline these people, so you better be strong enough for both of us, and I'm just going to sit here. And that's what happened. My husband Ryan just sat there, and I was the one having to tell each layer of management that they brought over to us, no, 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 we are not buying a timeshare. And we stuck to our guns, and this again was in Mexico, and we got our money for the fishing charter, and we hightailed it out of there really fast. We were like, oh my gosh, if we get out of here alive, it'll be amazing. And went back to Isla Mujeres. for our fishing charter, and that's where we were staying. But anyhow, so I know that I'm very strong-willed in regard to being able to say no to things. I have a very strong discipline. But I still got sucked into buying a house flipping program. Heck, like, what? And an options trading program. Oh, what a waste. So I think I spent $2,000 on that day, $1,000 for each. One might have been like a couple $100 if you bought, both of them. And, just stupid. And the crazy thing about it is, and this is the learning experience in regard to NLP, is I was sitting there the whole time listening to these speakers, not interested, not interested, not interested. And somehow they got my brain to turn and go up to the little table and buy both of these packages. And the line of people buying these packages was bonkers. Like I couldn't believe it. And the house flipping one, I never even went to that course because then it becomes a funnel and you go to the one piece of it that's a few days and they don't really teach you anything. It's just all mindset and talk, a lot of jargon, a lot of videos. You learn that Dean Graciano's in on this, and then you learn it's all in Utah. So as you get into this space, you start to realize, oh, I see kind of what's going on and how this all works. But at the time, I was clueless. And needless to say, this has been a big learning experience. And then you get into the funnel system, and then you buy another package. And I did that with the options. I thought, oh, I guess in order to really learn the options, I need to go to the next level. So then I bought the next level. Luckily, there was another girl that they let me split the cost with. So the cost was still high. I believe I paid $5,000, but some people were paying $20,000. And then I went to that, stayed in a hotel up in Fort Lauderdale. And that was 3 days, 2 nights, 3 days, something like that. I feel like I've kind of blocked this out of my memory. And again, a lot of mindset, a lot of them teaching you a computer system. But at the end of the day, you weren't able to really learn how to do options and how to really invest and do it because it's illegal for them to teach you that. You have to go through a fiduciary or Robin Hood or Fidelity or something like that to really do it. And finally at the end I said, well, when are we going to actually learn how to do this? Like, we're not learning anything. You're just showing us drills kind of on your system, walking us through exercises and having mindset conversations. And they were like, well, we really can't teach you that. And I was like, oh my God, I have just been completely suckered into this whole process. So, like I said, it was a major learning experience. It's obviously something, my fault, I own it, but it definitely teaches you a lot about the space. It definitely teaches you a lot about how all of this works and how some people have made a lot of money. And, it is an eye-opening experience. And that was in 2018. So then I ended up buying this book, put it on my bookshelf. And I was telling someone the story about the Tony Robbins event and what happened to me and my lessons from it. And that person said to me, oh, they use NLP in those events. And it clicked. I was like, oh, wow. So they really, the speakers that speak on behalf, and Tony gets a big cut, probably his investment, and Dean Graciano and all those people. There's lots of people involved in this company. I forget the name of it in Salt Lake. And these speakers are trained. They are trained hardcore in NLP. And it's fascinating. It's very, very fascinating how they can use certain words to really get your mind to shift and for you to do what they want to do. So it's really fascinating. This book actually is written in a really positive format and isn't about the dark side, but I did go onto my Scribe. And if you don't know what Scribe is, it's an app similar to Audible, but much less expensive. However, they don't have as many titles as Audible does. But it's a good thing to have as like a backup especially if you're looking for certain titles that are older. They might be on Scribe and then you don't have to pay for them on Audible. So there's a little tip for you. But on Scribe, I found all these NLP books, the dark side of NLP. It was really funny. I listened to one of them to kind of see, how dark is this? What does this really mean? And it was just some words here and there and everything, but it was just interesting to listen to because it just reminded me of what I went through when I went to this, event that Tony Robbins hosted back in 2018. So anyhow, I just thought I'd share that. It's just fascinating. I was blown away by the amount of people that went and signed up. I'm sure the amount of people that do what I did in terms of not even going to the first course or going to the first thing and never going to the second thing or paying the money and then never, that's how they make money. It's just a fact. I mean, that's how they make money is the amount of people that really don't go through everything, or the person that paid 20 grand and then never did anything with it. That happens. I mean, the girl who shared the cost with me from the initial weekend, she never even went to the second thing. So she paid $5,000 and she never went to the second thing. I at least went to the second thing and then learned more and learned what this whole thing was about. But she never even went to the second thing. So they got her $5,000 and that was it. So it's just pretty fascinating. So I really like this book and I wanted to share that. And in this book, what I thought I'd share as far as a more concrete tip was this section that they have on page 110, and it is about Navy SEAL training. And like me, you probably know that to become a Navy SEAL is not an easy task. They have weeks of hell training, and it's difficult to get in the first place. So what they found was that 76% of carefully selected candidates, and what this means is they had really high IQs and really great physical capabilities, were dropping out. And they were trying to figure out, how could they fix this? So they hired a psychologist named Eric Potteratt, and he became the command psychologist of the U.S. Navy SEALs. And he put together they call it the Big Four habits, and you can use them sequentially or all together to kind of bust through and be able to accomplish the training and obviously therefore the missions that they are tasked to do. So I love these habits, and I just think, again, they're things that often we know and we don't practice, or we could use some tweaks on, but really doing the reps and building the practice over time is what creates the change. So that's why I wanted to share them. So the first habit that they came up with is called focus on right now. Seems simple, right? That's controlling your mind to not be thinking of things in the past or not be thinking in the future. Just really focusing on right now. So I'm going to read a little bit from the book as I go through these habits. So I just want to call that out too. The major way to combat stress when you're doing something very difficult is to narrow your focus. Narrow it down to the immediate future. Navy SEALs focus on just getting to the end of the 20-mile run. They're not thinking about anything after that. Habit number 2, imagine how good it will feel. So here we have, some manifestation techniques thrown in here, right? Strategically thrown in. I don't want that to seem haphazard, but they're good techniques, right? So this one's related to rehearsing past successes and to go through your body, how familiar your body is feeling with yourself. So I'm pleased with myself. I'm on top of this. I'm doing this. It's working. So feeling success and imagining what that's like versus thinking about any type of failure. Again, I'm reading on and off from the book. How good it feels to be almost done. How good it feels to be completing this task. So really feeling things and recognizing those feelings and recognizing that you need to get into those feelings is super important. Habit 3. This one I thought was really, really fascinating, and I'll tell you why in a second, is breathing. When all else fails, breathe deeply. So the exact count for the breathing is inhale deeply for a count of 6. Hold it for a count of 2, then exhale for a count of 6, completely emptying your lungs. Do this 3 times, and you can do this anytime, during the day. So we are often told to breathe, but not really told to do it for 6 seconds. So I even shared this with my husband, Ryan, and he was like, wow, yeah, you're right. Because when you do it like they're saying, it changes your thought pattern because you are actually changing your blood chemistry. It calms down your amygdala. So it makes it definitely more strategic and more intentional when you are holding it for a certain amount of seconds. And also they say that it lowers your blood pressure. You flood your brain with oxygen and increases your ability to think and react thoughtfully instead of out of panic or emotion. What a simple tip that you just have to remember and do when you're breathing. So I'll read that again because it's pretty powerful. Inhale deeply for a count of 6. Hold it for a count of 2. Then exhale for a count of 6, completely emptying your lungs. Do this 3 times, and just 3 times anytime during the day. I love that. And then the 4th habit is cheering yourself on. Like, how cool is that? Like, I just was like, duh. Often we're our worst critics. So if you think about all the sports players, when you read their stories, they're cheering themselves on. They're imagining the finish line. They're really focused on that. They're focused on that you can do it. You can make this happen. This is easy. You can take care of this. They're not focused on the mistakes. So again, I do think we all have the capacity to do these 4 habits. It's just really remembering them and putting them into practice and making sure we do them and building those habits. So I will put this in the show notes and obviously the name of the book. Again, the name is NLP The Essential Guide. And it's just a really great book. I'm almost done with it. And I thought it would be fun to share just some tips as we're heading into the new year, some tips that we all can utilize if you're not utilizing them at all, or strengthen. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I would love to connect with you. Please feel free to connect on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. It's Melinda_Van Fleet. My website is goodkarmasuccesscoach.com, which is also the name of my other podcast, which is more focused on personal development. And you can sign up for the Monday Mojo newsletter by going on goodkarmasuccesscoach.com and signing up for the free Take Action and Believe. It's a daily guide. It's kind of like a little workbook, and I share my tips and tools in there. There's a little quiz to see how you're doing, and also some journaling pages. So it's actually like a little workbook. So I would love to hear from you. Thank you again for listening, and until next time, hope you crush it in sales.